First of all, I wish to thank you, Dr. Filippa Steele, and all the members of the CRUISE project for inviting me here to the University of Cambridge and for offering me this extraordinary opportunity to discuss my research with them. And I'll give a short introduction to the Neo-Hittite states. The so-called Neo-Hittite states, that are also called Syro-Anatolian states, were regional Lubian, Aramaic, and probably Phoenician-speaking polities developed in southeastern Anatolia and northwestern Syria during the Iron Age after the collapse of the Hittite Empire at the beginning of the 12th century BC. They were progressively subjected to tribute and then conquered by the Neo-Syrian Empire at the end of the 8th century BC. So we can see here Kue, Cilicia, and Carchemish, and Masuari, Bitadini, and then Gurgum, Yahudi, Melid, Kumuk, Tel Halaf, Palestine, Amuk, and Bitaguzi, Hamat in the south, and Tabal here in South Anatolia. And we can what I'm focusing on in my current research is the presence among Syro-Anatolian Iron Age texts of a number of bilingual and even trilingual inscriptions. They are usually studied in order to recognize which languages were spoken by different population groups in the Syro-Anatolian areas where they were found. Often they are also studied in order to identify what the primary language of the text is. To my knowledge, what the meaning of multilingual texts was among the societies that produced them has not been adequately studied so far. In fact, a multilingual royal inscription implies that the king or the ruler speaks more than one language. Other ancient Near Eastern texts could have been constitutively conceived for being written in two languages, for instance, international treaties. But royal inscriptions were powerful tools of royal propaganda, and one cannot fail to connect multilingual royal inscriptions to the promotion of a specific image of the king. Obviously, the audience plays an important role in the choice of writing a multilingual text. Nevertheless, the issue also deals, in my opinion, with the reception of multilingualism in the Syro-Anatolian Iron Age cultures. How was a king who spoke various languages perceived? The aim of my research is to try to answer this question, or rather, to give a contribution to a better comprehension of this issue. In this respect, I plan to analyze all the Syro-Anatolian Iron Age multilingual inscriptions with respect of their textual typology, collocation, date of composition, and so on. This would enable me to identify similarities and differences between these texts and to recognize what distinguishes them from other monolingual inscriptions. Secondly, I am going to carry out an analysis of contemporary textual references concerning multilingualism, exploring cultural elements which could offer useful insights on this issue. I am just starting to work on this specific topic. Thus, today, I am able to provide a detailed overview of the involved documents. I cannot provide concrete research results yet, and my observations should be considered absolutely tentative. The texts I am dealing with are the following: Karatepe 1, in hieroglyphic Lubian and Phoenician; Sinekoi, hieroglyphic Lubian and Phoenician; Ivriz 2, hieroglyphic Lubian and Phoenician, but it is not published yet; In Chirli, hieroglyphic Luwian, cuneiform Assyrian and Phoenician. Arslan Tash 1 and 2, hieroglyphic Luwian, cuneiform Assyrian and Aramaic. Tel Fekeriye, Assyrian and Aramaic. We can add also Hama fragment 7, which is a seal, and it bears a hieroglyphic Luwian and an Aramaic inscription. We can see here their geographical distribution: Karatepe, Chinekoi, Ibrastu, Incirli, Arsalantash, Tel Fekeriye, more or less, and then, as I said, the seal from Hama. As you can see in this image, Karatepe 1 consists of the inscriptions placed on 2 city gates in the fortifications surrounding the hilltop of Karatepe Aslantas in Cilicia, the lower or north gate and the upper or south gate. The lower gate inscription is well preserved. The upper gate inscription is more fragmentary. Each gate has one hieroglyphic Luwian and one Phoenician inscription. The hieroglyphic and the Phoenician texts are equivalent with only a few minor divergences. The text sequence depends on the Phoenician North Gate inscription. We can see here a plan of the North Gate and the sequence of hieroglyphic Luwian orthostats written between the sculptures or on the bottom or on the statue in itself. And then orthostats with Phoenician texts. We can see now a plan of the South Gate with sculptures. A third Phoenician text is preserved on the skirt of a colossal statue of the storm god found inside the upper gate. The author of the text is Azatiwadas, who was probably appointed by the previous king Awarkus, perhaps the second, to rule Kue Kiyawa as the regent, since the son of the previous king was still too young to rule. The dating of Karatepe 1 inscription has long been debated. It was traditionally dated to the 8th century BC. In recent studies, though, a dating to the early 7th century BC has been proposed. According to Ilya Yakubovich 2015, the Phoenician version represents the primary character of the text. The scholar argues that the rulers of Kue claimed Greek descent and adopted the Phoenician language as a statement of identity, in opposition to the indigenous Luwian population. This would have been the first step toward the creation of the Greek alphabet. Chinekoi is also bilingual in hieroglyphic Luwian and Phoenician and inscribed on the base of a statue of the storm god found in 1997 at Chinekoi, approximately 30 kilometers south of Adana in Cilicia. The base of the statue consists of a chariot driven by 2 bulls. The Luwian version is placed between the legs of the animals, on the back of the chariot and partially on the surface and side of the base. The Phoenician text is placed on the front of the base between the bulls. Probably the monument never reached its final location, the mouth of the Sabri-Shamri river, namely the second river, but was abandoned nearby. The author of the text is the king Raikas I, who is probably the same king author of the Incirli trilingual text. He is probably to be identified with King Uriki, who is mentioned in Neo-Syrian inscriptions. The Chinekoi text is rhetorically very similar to Karatepe 1. According to Lanfranchi, Azathiwadas adapted the rhetoric patterns of Chinekoi in order to invert the ideological value of the alliance with Assyria that they had in that text. This ideological dialogue between the two inscriptions has been taken into account in order to establish the relative chronology of the two bilingual texts. The dating of Chinekoi has also been subject to an intense debate since its discovery. The inscription could be approximately dated to the second half of the 8th century BC. According to Jakubowicz, in this case also, the Phoenician version is the primary character of the text. Ibrastu is also bilingual in hieroglyphic Lubian and Phoenician. Unfortunately, it has not been published yet. It consists of the lower half of a stele portraying a male figure, most likely a figure of the storm god. It was found 75 meters upstream from the famous rock relief, which bears the Ibrastu 1 inscription. The author of the inscription is the king Warpalawas, who is known from other inscriptions. He was the king of Tuwana, Tiana, so we are in the Tabalian area, and the inscription can be dated to the late 8th century BC. In this text, the king mentions his father Muaharanis. The hieroglyphic text is inscribed on the background of the figure, on the reverse, and on the right side. The Phoenician text is inscribed on the reverse, on the right side, and on the left edge. Incirli is a trilingual inscription, written in hieroglyphic Luwian, cuneiform Assyrian, and Phoenician. It is inscribed on a stele discovered at Karaman Marash, ancient Marash. All four sides of the stele were inscribed, but the condition of the stone is very poor and weathered. Consequently, the text is very difficult to read with the naked eye. The front top of the stele bears the image of a royal figure in Assyrian style. Traces of signs on the top right portion consist of hieroglyphics, but they are nearly impossible to read. It has been supposed that they only represent the name of the king, presumably as a copy of the Assyrian text. The two lines inscribed immediately below the image and on the right side portions consist of Neo-Assyrian cuneiform. All of the remaining text was in Phoenician script. The stone was reused in late antiquity as a boundary stone, so that it also bears the word Orion in big majuscule Greek script. Only the Phoenician version has been published. The author of the inscription is Vraikas the first, probably the same Vraikas found in Chinekoi, king of Kue. It seems that he remained loyal to Assyria during the rebellion of western states led by Matiel of Arpad along with Urartu against Tiglat-Pileser III shortly after the middle of the 8th century BC. If so, this text should antedate the Karatepe 1 inscription, and the analysis of the script confirms this dating. Thanks to his loyalty, Kue gained new territories at the expense of the neighboring kingdom of Kumuk. In fact, the stele was probably erected to mark the land that was gifted to Vraikas by Tiglat-Pileser III. The territory was the boundary between the land of Vraikas and the mountains of Gurgum. Arslan Tash 1 and 2 are two trilingual texts inscribed on the reverse of a pair of orthostats in the form of portal lions from the east gate entrance of Arslan Tash, ancient Hadatu, approximately 30 kilometers to the east of Tel Ahmar on the Euphrates River. The monuments and inscriptions are dated to the first half of the 8th century BC, 780 BC circa. On the flat side of the southern lion that once stood against the wall and that therefore would have been hidden, there were three inscriptions. Top, a 9-line Aramaic inscriptions. Bottom, a 9-line cuneiform inscription. Bottom right, a 4-line hieroglyphic Lubian inscription. Only the hieroglyphic text was published by Hawkins in 2000 as the Arslantash I inscription. In this text, the name of the author is lost, but he has the title of Masuarian country lord and boasts the foundation of the city of Hadatu. The Aramaic version probably depends on the Assyrian text. A provisional description of the content of the Assyrian and Aramaic texts was provided by Rollig 2000 and Galter 2004. Ninurta Beluzur presents himself as a governor of Kars al-Manassar, eunuch and servant of the Turtanu Shamshiyu. She boasts the erection of the city gates with their lions. The text ends with a protective curse against the future prince who will destroy the inscription. The lion was erected in the Central Park in Raqqa. It seems that during the Syrian civil war in 2015, it was bulldozed into pieces. 3 corresponding inscriptions were placed on the back of the other lion orthostat, Arslantash II, that were taken to the Aleppo Museum. Moreover, the other 2 lions from the West Gate both also have an Assyrian and an Aramaic inscription on their reverse, but a Luwian text is missing. The south side lion of the West Gate was also erected in the Central Park in the city of Raqqa, and it seems to have been destroyed as well. All texts where the Aramaic and Assyrian inscriptions show parallelism while the Luwian appears more independent, report on the construction of the city walls and the formation of the gate lions by the Assyrian governor from Kars al-Manassar, called Ninurta Beluzur in the still unpublished cuneiform text. Quite surprisingly, while he is referred to as the governor of Kars al-Manassar in the cuneiform and the Aramaic texts, the name of the kingdom in the hieroglyphic text is Masuari, a term which was used in Luwian inscriptions preceding the Assyrian conquest. According to some scholars, this makes it unclear whether the Luwian text corresponds with the Assyrian one. In Bunnen's opinion, this element testifies that the Luwian tradition at Tel Ahmar, Kars al-Manassar, did not come to a halt with the Assyrian conquest by Salmanassar III in 856 BC. Telfekerie is an Assyrian Aramaic bilingual inscription from Guzana, Tel Alaf, engraved on a statue of a king. It was found outside of its archaeological context. The statue is to be interpreted as a votive object for the god Hadad. The text can be dated to the middle of the 9th century BC. The inscription is placed at the bottom of the tunic worn by the king and bears the Akkadian text on the front and the Aramaic text on its back. More precisely, we deal here with 2 texts. The first, lines 1 to 12 of the Aramaic version, is a dedication to the god Hadad of the city of Guzan by Hadad-Izi, the king, Aramaic version, or the governor, Assyrian version, of the city of Guzan. In the second text, lines 12 to 23 of the Aramaic version, the author is called king, a governor in Akkadian, of the cities Guzan, Sikan, and Azran. The second text was clearly composed when the king ruled over a more extensive territory than he did when the first text was written. This king is not attested elsewhere than in this inscription. To complete the picture, Hama fragment 7 can just briefly be mentioned, although it is not a royal inscription, but rather a bulla, which bears on one side impressions of 2 circular stamp seals, decorated with animal heads, filling motifs, and the 4-letter Aramaic inscription. Also, on the other side, an unclear hieroglyphic inscription is found. Undeniably, Syro-Anatolian states were characterized by multilingualism, and the use of different languages could be affected by the target audience. Nevertheless, one may wonder why these specific texts were written in more than one language. I would like to examine this issue not only from the perspective of the audience, but also from that of who produced such messages. In this respect, I am offering some preliminary observations which I would like to discuss with you today. By analyzing these documents, the first element one can note is that all of them include both text and figures. No one of them consists only of written text. Therefore, their communicative value is very strong and derives from the interrelation between the text and its support. The whole monument is involved in communicating a message, which is formed by text, sculptures, and figures. Accordingly, the content of the text might be only one of the communicative channels at work here, not necessarily the one predominant over the others. In particular, the similarity between Karatepe 1 and Arslantash 1 and 2 drew my attention. Both interpretations of the monuments are quite problematic. In the Karatepe Gate complex, the disposition of the hieroglyphic orthostats does not seem to be arranged consistently with the textual narrative. In turn, it is very surprising that the Arslantash lions bear trilingual inscriptions meant to be hidden, as if the written text had to be present but was considered quite disturbing compared to the sculptures. Galter, 2004, connects the multiple languages of the Arslantash inscriptions to the multicultural and multilingual situation of the state of Bitadini and to the uncertainty about which party would hold the political power in the future. Although I agree with this perspective, in my opinion, there might have been other reasons behind the choice of using multiple languages. In my view, this status quo deserves to be further studied by connecting text and monument. In fact, the content of the text may not have been as important as its being placed on that specific monument and as it's being written in multiple languages. This should have had a strong value in itself. The inscriptions on the Karatepe gates and on the Arslantash lions are both portal inscriptions, aimed to celebrate the erection of city gates and to protect the monument and the name of its builder. These monuments are supposed to last forever. Accordingly, the time dimension plays an important role here. And in recent years, how the city gates were highly symbolic places where ritual ceremonies were performed has been deeply investigated. Mary Bakhvarova, in 2016, connects the scenes represented on the Karatepe gates to the cult of the ancestors. In her opinion, although the reliefs do not seem to be aimed at depicting a narrative, one can recognize cultic scenes of the royal ancestor Muxas, Mopso, such as the offering of sacrifices accompanied by music and songs among them. Furthermore, according to the scholar, such songs could lead to parallelism between contemporary and legendary events. For instance, in the orthostat with the scene of two antithetical warriors stabbing a man upside down, similar to one found at Tel Alaf, she recognizes a hint to the episode of Gilgamesh and Enkidu fighting Kuwawa. Moreover, according to Shade 2019, which analyzes the Phoenician version of the Karatepe inscription, the blessings section of the text includes volitive expressions connected to the preceding ritual prescriptions. These volitive expressions, together with scenes of banquets and musicians, would offer a point of contact between the present and future, between contemporary ceremonies and the hope of a prosperous future, which will be achieved by performing rituals for the deities. Accordingly, the scholar argues that the inscription was aimed at increasing ritual prescriptions and at perpetuating the cultic performances. Apparently, symbolic value of the city gates consists of their connecting present, past, and future. In other words, they are meant to keep the memory, but at the same time, they emanate a strong performative message. From this perspective, the use of hieroglyphic Lubian at Karatepe would be explained not only as a concession to the indigenous population of Kue, but perhaps also as a tool for embedding the local memory exactly in the moment in which a new era begins. The same could apply to the use of the traditional definition Masuwari found in the Arslantash hieroglyphic inscription. The author of the Arslantash inscriptions, Ninurta Belusur, was likely to have been a local ruler appointed governor of Kars al-Manassar. This can be inferred by the reference to the house of his father found in the Assyrian and Aramaic text of the Western Lions. The same situation might have concerned Adad-Izi, who is referred to as king in the Aramaic version of the Tel Fekeri inscription and as governor in the Akkadian version. These apparently hybrid figures were probably local rulers who were allowed to keep their power under the condition that they acknowledged Assyrian sovereignty. For them, the fact itself of using multiple languages could have had a specific coding connotation that went beyond the denotative meaning of the text. Multilingualism might then be interpreted as a tool aimed at linking past and present, memory and changing. In any case, the relation between text monument and their location should have been of great importance. Even the Chinekoi inscription could have had a strong symbolic value, since it was a statue of a deity supposed to be placed at the mouth of a river. Additionally, similarly to Ninurta Belusur, Raikas too seems to include a metaphorical reference to his paternal gods, namely to the traditional local religion, before introducing the new and perhaps embarrassing issue of the alliance with Assyria. Moreover, by means of multilingualism, Syro-Anatolian rulers could provide a picture of accumulation and completeness, in the same way as many rhetoric patterns in their inscriptions are characterized by accumulation, completeness, and multiplication images. Among these cultures, even the linguistic accumulation could have had a positive connotation. As is well known, a famous passage of an inscription of Yarris, regent of Carchemish, includes references to 12 languages. Carchemish 15b, clause 20. The interpretation of clause 19, traditionally read as referring to multiple writing systems, was recently revised by Van den Hout, who proposes a new reading of the sign 326 scriba. The scholar identifies in the pictorial character of the sign a chair or a stool and proposes to transliterate it as sella. According to Van den Hout, this sign should be connected to the concept of a higher officer with royal affiliation. The arguments supporting this reinterpretation are very compelling. Regardless of what could then be the correct interpretation of Yarri's statement, it is clear that the cultural background of this text highlights a positive attitude toward multilingualism, considered as an indicator of international prestige. On the contrary, as argued by Santini 2021, from the Assyrian imperial perspective, multilingualism and the foreign languages were seen as disorder and lack of unification, at least at the level of political discourse, as could be deduced by contemporary Assyrian textual references to foreign languages, at least before the reign of Assurbanipal. Summing up, an analysis of Syro-Anatolian Iron Age bilingual, trilingual inscriptions can contribute, in my opinion, to a better understanding of the cultural attitudes of the civilizations that produced them. Thank you.